Would you believe me if I told you that Splice was already out of the tournament? How about Envy? How about FaZe, all finishing top 16? The answer is probably no. How about one more for you? What about the situation of Units and Sicario playing for a secured top 6 spot? We've got breakdowns, predictions, outlooks, and more coming right up. COD fans, good to see you guys. Welcome back, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I could have filled this entire video up with clips, and honestly, it's just gonna be too hard to because of how many things happened today. A lot of things happened today, and it's gonna be difficult for me to tell you it all, but we're gonna do our absolute very best to get things done because things got hot, things got wild. Let's break into it. It was day one of the bracket. Top 16 teams are left. We would be left with only 12 after the day. Starting things off, as you look at the bracket, we'd go down to the very bottom left. Singularity and Sicario would play first, and Team Envy and Units would also play to get the day going. Now, this is interesting because it's two of our three open teams playing up against each other, and then Team Envy, who look to be having the easier bracket that's anyone could possibly have as far as the quadrant goes, are playing in a matchup where they should win, probably without a doubt in most people's minds. Certain things would happen where that wouldn't be the case. Let's start off with Singularity and Sicario. And how about this one? This was a barn burner of a matchup. It would start off going very nicely for Sicario as they found themselves a pretty convincing win on their first hard point. It would then be bounced back as Singularity battle back into Search and Destroy, and then it would go to a round 5 control on Arsenal. But it would be Sicario who end up winning the day, and Exceed had a absolutely insane day. Chino also looked good, Tommy looked good, Lenny looked good, Proto looked, the whole team looked damn good. Really, really good. It wasn't without some hesitation, though, from Singularity. They looked very promising in their hard point as well as in the control. Really, a lot of those games could have gone either way. Singularity not quite up to the task, though, to start things off a 3-1 to Sicario. Team Envy and Units. This is one that I think everyone would have expected to go in favor of Team Envy. But it wouldn't be without drama, as Units would go to 5. Let's play it that way. We'll go to 5. We'll start with the hard points. A 250-64 on the frequency hard point for Units, but there was also a gridlock hard point that came down to a single point. Units almost able to put this one away in 4, but it was a 249-250. Envy able to survive on gridlock. I will say, Units, I was most worried about their control, and that continued to be the case as Envy pummeled them. 3-0 on Seaside, which is one of their more rehearsed maps, but again, they've only won it a single time, and that was just before this event. Not good at all for Units. But the good news for Units was the simple fact that once again, Envy find themselves in round 11s that they can't clutch up in Search and Destroy. This would go all the way to 5, round 11, 6-5. Units able to take this one 3-2 overall. So you get Units and Sicario playing up against one another for a top 6 spot guaranteed. You would have told me a month ago that were going to happen, I would not believe you. Let's go to the top left-hand quadrant, though, of the bracket. It would be E United and Team War, and Evil Geniuses and Splice. Now, this is where things get a little bit more interesting because I don't think anyone would have expected E United to lose to Team War. They didn't put up much of a fight whatsoever, with the exception of the Search and Destroy. Honestly, pretty easy 3-1. Evil Geniuses and Splice, I think a lot of people were sitting there saying Splice, after how they looked in the pools, holds the favor, but Evil Geniuses have made some insane corrections, some insane adaptations, and they looked very, very good. They were able to take the Arsenal hardpoint 250-232. It was a 250-127 on frequency, a map that you would figure should go the way of Splice, but it just didn't. Sogs weren't really showing up all that well. The only map that Splice were able to take are the Search and Destroy. 4-6 there, and at one point in time, if you remember back, I was talking about how Evil Geniuses has gotten a lot better at their search. They are now 1-3 in the Search and Destroy. Definitely have to bone up on that as they will move into E United next. A 3-1 there, like I mentioned. And that's a very interesting matchup. And just to give you a little bit of a heads up, the betting lines that are going out right now for both of those matches on the left-hand side of the bracket that I've seen so far, you've got Sicario as the underdog, which I favor them in that matchup versus Units pretty heavily. Again, Units have looked awful in the control. That's one of the biggest things. The hardpoint Search and Destroy, a little bit more 50-50, but but the control, Sicario has looked a lot better there than Units. So I'm giving a little bit of headway to Sicario. They're the underdog bet. Bet it. Unless Exceed, if you're watching this, which I know you are, you're absolutely terrible. So you need to show up and prove something, because I just am not impressed.
The joke is, he's not. He's actually gross at this game, but we're giving him extra motivation.
And then for the United and Evil Geniuses matchup, Evil Geniuses also the underdog there, and honestly throw a couple of dollars that way, because they have looked very good in their hardpoint, very good in their control, a little bit wishy-washy in the search and destroy, but again, E United has only been really looking solid when they play Seaside on the respawn. Really flawless when it comes to their hardpoint, pretty flawless when it comes to their control. I can't imagine Evil Geniuses are going to let them play Seaside on both, if let alone any of the map types. I wouldn't be surprised for them to double veto it when it comes to the respawn. So I've got Evil Geniuses. I think Coach Revan, you know, if you're watching this, Revan, maybe a little bit of insight there for you as well. But the whole thing is, again, I think the Evil Geniuses are just a little bit more versatile across the maps. And with that notion, yes, they're still the underdog, but that betting line, right now I'm looking at it as plus 255. You want to jump on that. I can see the upset definitely happening. On the other side of the bracket, though, we'll switch and start things off with the top right-hand side of the bracket. FaZe Clan, Reciprocity, 100 Thieves, and Luminosity. Again, after Luminosity didn't look so great when it came down to their pool play, a lot of worries going into 100 Thieves, and Reciprocity, who looked very good during their pool play with the exception of that round 5, that map 5 rather, against Envy, were looking also pretty complete as a full team. Would they be able to show up this time around? The answer would be yes. They would come out and absolutely start looking to smoke FaZe as they were able to take them 3-1 in the maps. It was a 250-160 on Hacienda Hardpoint, one of FaZe's better maps. They did lose the Arsenal Hardpoint 250-166, so the first map did go in favor of FaZe Clan, but then it was all Reciprocity from there. 6-4 in the payload surge, and then a 3-1 on the Seaside control. Number of great moments from everybody on Reciprocity, and that's when this team, like I mentioned a couple of videos past, if they're going to make a championship run, every single player has to be playing at their height, and they showcased that today. On the other side of things, though, speaking of teams playing at their height, Luminosity comes out with an absolute fire as they're able to not only take the first hard point, they're also able to go round 11 with the 100 Thieves in the search and destroy, and then 3-0 on the Arsenal control. This very well could have been, and in a lot of people's opinions, should have been a 3-0 for Luminosity. 100 Thieves looked a little bit lost, like they weren't really ready to play today. They would eventually lose it in the map 4, so Luminosity moves on after a 3-1, and it's just interesting because 100 Thieves take Luminosity to frequency hardpoint. I had this conversation on Twitter with a couple of people. The hard ban for 100 Thieves and Hardpoint has been Seaside, and that's also been one of the go-to bans for Luminosity as well. So was there potential folly when it came down to the map ban and veto process? Maybe. The consideration is there's a lot of moving parts into the equation, but at the end of the day, Luminosity, their best, most practiced map is Frequency Hardpoint, no doubt about it, and they're allowed to go there, and they end up clutching up against 100 Thieves, even though it looked scary for quite some time. You kind of had a feeling that Luminosity is going to find some extra fuego and move their way in. And then to finish things off, again, we've got Optic and Heretics in the bottom, and Enigma 6 and Elevate. If you bet the Enigma 6 line, you're freaking welcome. I don't know what the bookies out there were doing, giving you guys Enigma 6 at even lines. I put 50 down, should have put more. It was the easiest payout this side of the Mississippi. 250, 141, 6-3, 3-0. Enigma 6 with a handful of cheeky strats. Kismet on Arsenal, Control, Grapple, Sniper, Front door of A. Works 2 different times. Also General, the GKS, and a variable scope throughout a lot of the time that he was playing on Hacienda. Interesting strategies, and it's working. It's paying off, and they'll go into Optic tomorrow because Optic was able to handle Heretics without much of an issue, and this Optic team is getting new life. Their respawn has been phenomenal this entire tournament so far. Their search and destroy a little wonky at times, but I've been very impressed, generally speaking, about this team in hardpoint and control. That's a huge improvement because at Miami, well, they didn't win a map at Miami, but they have been a little bit wishy-washy when you go back to when you watch them at the cross div before Miami. It was a 3-4 map win-loss ratio in hardpoint, a 2-2 in control. Now they're 7-1 in hardpoint, 3-1 in control with some great averages behind them. So that's going to be an interesting one. No lines posted yet, But again, I would stay away from Reciprocity, Luminosity. It's going to be way too hard to bet. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see the lines that Enigma 6 get. I could see Enigma 6 beating Optic just based on the map pools alone that they like to play on. I think Enigma 6 is a little bit more versatile, and based on how they've looked so far this tournament, they're looking like they've got that little bit of extra something to get them over the hump of possibly taking down these top 6 teams that they, in the past, have struggled with. Now, again, these little cheeky strategies could completely flop against a team like Optic, and they might just fall completely flat. But I have a feeling that this is kind of like the Rampart sprinkle dust that Luminosity were able to find at Fort Worth, kind of going in the favor of Enigma 6. We'll see what happens. That could very well be incorrect, but so far, they're doing very, very well. Down to the losers bracket. Again, we would have to get rid of 4 teams to start, and we'd start things off on the top side of the bracket. Team War would go up against Team Splice. Singularity would go up against Team Envy. Interesting matchups because we've got, again, 2 teams coming out of the open bracket playing up against 2 CWL, most people would say, favorites. Now, this Splice game versus Team War was absolutely intense, with really the exception of one of the Search and Destroys where it was a very easy 6-0 for Splice, but they did not look super great when it came down to the hard point. This one in the end would be resolved by essentially the control, which Team War were able to pull back a number of very close rounds on C-side control. Down numbers a number of times, able to find just enough committal, and Team War is able to get through the control, and then as you finish things off, Hacienda, it would be Tempest play coming forward for Splice, not able to connect with anything, and Team War in round 11 able to clutch up a number of rounds where numbers were not in their favor. They displayed more clutch. And again, I had mentioned a number of times before that Splice had a lot more issues than just one single player. Huke played out of his freaking mind throughout this entire day today, and it just was not enough. Team War able to be the more complete team. They take it 3-2. Singularity and Team Envy, not nearly as close, to be completely candid. Both the hard points decidedly in favor of Singularity. 250-163, 250-155. 6-4, the Search and Destroy on payload. The only place that they would really shake would be on Arsenal control. They are now 0-3 on that map as a whole since they've started playing it. It was an 0-3 versus Envy as well, but this Envy team, they just didn't have it, flat out. A number of great moments from Gunless, a number of great moments from Decimate, a number of great moments from a couple of players, but Singularity, they have Kleenex, and he popped the actual F off, especially on the hardpoint Arsenal. He was all over the place. There was no response for Kleenex whatsoever. He was able to carry that momentum throughout the majority of the set. He was a maniac. Started like 3-17 at one point in time, or 3-10 at one point, and ended up 34-17. Insane performance from Kleenex. Definitely a player to keep your eye on as they continue to move forward. So does Team War as you see them. They'll be waiting for teams to drop down from the winners bracket. Going down a little bit further though to finish things off, FaZe Clan and 100 Thieves, Elevate and Heretics. These are both barn burners, and for different reasons. 100 Thieves and FaZe Clan, these are 2 teams that, even if you were to make a power rankings, I think after this event, you'd be hard-pressed to not put either of those 2 teams in your top 6, I would say, if not top 4. Both teams have had incredible performances throughout. It just came down to not really being prepared for their first game in the winners round, and now all of a sudden, they're in a really bad spot in the losers bracket. This is a top 16 matchup, and we're going to start with FaZe and 100 Thieves because the Heretics Elevate one, it was also intense, went to 5, but not for the right reasons, I would say. And it was nuts. This one was absolutely crazy. FaZe Clan started off hot with a 2-0 start, 250-217 on frequency, 6-5 in the round 11 in gridlock, and a number of moments where Celium popped. Zuma played the set of his frickin' life. He was insane the entirety of the set. There was one map where Celium went 49 and like 24, and that was for the L. That was on Hacienda Hardpoint, a 228-250. But it really, for me, came down to one play. 100 Thieves looked completely lost. They were down in the gridlock control. It was a 4v like 15 or something like that, 4v12. They're able to bounce back, and they're able to finalize the capture on point B of gridlock. This was for round 4, I believe it was. 2v8 is what it was, and they were able to clutch up and take the staggered spawns away from FaZe, and they were able to find a lot of momentum from there on out. It was a round 4 because the round 5 defense, 100 Thieves just held down the gas pedal and outran FaZe all over the map. And then, like I mentioned, it was Hacienda selling him for 49 kills, not EKA, 49 kills for the loss, as 100 Thieves were able to put together a pretty magical comeback on that map as well. We would then go to the Arsenal Search and Destroy, and it was just all 100 Thieves, 6-2. A classic, instant classic. You're going to want to go back and rewatch that one. If you're going to rewatch anything from the day, it's going to be hard to pick, but that's definitely the one you're going to want to rewatch. Heretics and Elevate, it would start off pretty nicely for the side of Elevate as they found themselves a convincing 250 to 231 win. Not super convincing, but still convincing nonetheless. But then there was a little bit of an issue in the Search and Destroy, which put them on a hiatus for about an hour. They were still able to take the map 6-4. That was on Arsenal, but then Heretics would bounce back, find themselves the 3-0 on Gridlock Control. Very convincing set, and then able to outlast. Again, I don't know why this even happened in the first place, but Elevate allowed Heretics to go to Hacienda Hardpoint. You should know that storyline by now. They just don't lose on that map. 250, 215 to the Heretics, and then it would finish off 6-4 on the Gridlock Search and Destroy in favor of Elevate. So your top 16 finishers are Splice, Envy, FaZe Clan, and Heretics. And again, you see the bracket as it lays out in front of you. We have some insane matchups tomorrow. No lines obviously posted for these, but Elevate, I just can't see them winning another game. I don't know how they've gone this far, to be completely candid with you guys. They had no business beating Heretics, I would have thought initially, but Heretics, the roster swap didn't seem to really work out for them. We had a lot of fun today in the Discord. A handful of you guys were stopping in and we were talking in chat. We also had a little bit of a time where we did a voice chat, kind of voice call. A lot of fun. I look forward to doing that stuff again. I don't want to go too much longer on this video, so we'll cut it here. Big predictions. I want to know, with all of these teams out, Splice, Envy, Gen G, FaZe, with all those big hitters out, who are your favorites coming in? Does that mean that E United and Optic have a better chance, or is there potential for a dark horse run from someone like Evil Geniuses or Enigma 6 or Sicario? Who knows? Or even Units? You never know. Again, one of those two teams between Sicario and Units are going to finish at least top 6. It's pretty insane to think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Description also has my Discord link if you want to join us. Until the next one, though, hope you all keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.